Welcome to Is Anybody Listening to Me podcast with Azar and the Meat. We have a full plate of topics we want to cover today. Big Meat's going to give you a vodka review. We're going to talk a little bit about Hard Knocks, a little quick feedback on the Suicide Squad movie that just came out last week that we mentioned. We're going to cover some other things that are on TV that we would like to recommend or suggest you pay attention to if you have some time. And especially if you have kids, I think you might enjoy them. And some NFL news, and then, of course, fantasy top 12 running backs. It's just Big Meat and I today, unless Jarvis surprises us. So, Big Meat, how's it going? How's it?
Good.
A nice Jarvis-free episode.
Yeah. Well, it's either Jarvis or Barry McCocken are dialing in here and the surprise guest. But yeah, I'm podcasting live from my daughter's bedroom here. This is what happens when you have kids and your wife keeps kicking you out of all the different rooms. That's why we need to we need to go back and doing this in person. We've been doing this Zoom thing now for over at least a year and a half now, right? We've done Zoom longer than we've done it when we were doing it live together.
Yeah, so but you know what? With the Zoom,
our families can't appreciate. What's that?
Well, you got to use your vacation home. That's when you had more time.
That is true. That's true. That's how it could be loud and obnoxious and or I should say louder and more obnoxious. More obnoxious.
Thank you for the correction. Well, I don't know how we could do it live. I think we've been kicked out of Roper Studios. So
that is true. That's true as well.
Mr. Roper has sold the building and moved on. Like now we're waiting for Mr. Furley in our life. Because I haven't seen Roper in forever and haven't heard
that
from
is
him,
true.
So.
Maybe Mrs. Roper can step in and make something happen. She is the one that's running things nowadays, isn't it?
He's got his own sitcom now. He's doing his own thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, you know what? We got all that equipment, for while it lasted. But I think at some point we'll do it again live. It's going to be maybe a little bit longer here, but I feel like the quality behind what we're doing is fine. Yeah. I wish our families just appreciated our podcasting abilities a little bit more. Just a little bit more appreciation, Azar. That's all I ask.
Well, you're gonna be asking for a long time. That's all I can say. But
yes.
But we're here. We have to do the podcast, so I'm happy. So we'll dive into it.
Sure. We'll get into it. We'll make it through without our third man in. Which by the way, for all of us, for all of you listeners out there following us on Twitter, we did win the Olympics discussion vote. Where should we talk more about the Olympics? And we did actually win on that vote.
However small the sample size
Jarvis
was.
bailing out now is going to save you from having to listen to me talk about the Olympics for about 20 minutes. God damn you. But anyway, but I would just say, because before people start, forget, or if you care to see it, that NBC video montage that they do, excellent. I've seen it 3 times already. It's only 5 minutes long, but it's so good. They do such a good job with it. And the music behind it, which is the score from Remember the Titans, it's phenomenal. It's like that's the song that they use for every single one of those montages for the last 5 Olympics. I think they started at early 2000s.
So now I got to say this. This is kind of a detour. You still found a way to sneak in the freaking Olympics song.
I did.
Even though we had a plan not to go into it, but it's just not me that wasn't really into it. It had the lowest ratings ever. Like it was a disaster from a ratings perspective. And it
was a ratings perspective.
But it wasn't just because it was Tokyo and the timeline. I mean not timeline, but the time difference, because the Beijing Olympics did much better. So I personally think the lack of fans and that feeling of the crowd supporting and cheering and that component that Jarvis was talking about, like seeing people celebrate that patriotism of their athlete winning something, it was lacking. It felt low, even though there was some great storylines like you and Jarvis were sharing. It didn't feel like it was missing something, and I guess it just lost its.
No, I think it's definitely the combination of the no fans or limited fans in the stands, and the energy, just like in any sporting event, right? You're watching. We've been dealing with this now for the last year and a half with, not now because the fans are back now for the most part, but empty stadiums in football, baseball, basketball. I mean, it just wasn't it wasn't the same. The energy was low. So I think that certainly contributed to it. There was also the fact that two of its biggest stars, um, with Michael Phelps and Usain Bolt not being in it anymore, right? They were in it for the last four Olympics. Now they're the two biggest Olympic stars, in the last few Olympics. So having them not in it just didn't have any. Didn't people weren't that interested, and I do think the time difference did make a difference. I mean, I know Beijing had a much higher ratings, but I don't think they were lacking those stories. And in fact, the U.S. up until the very last day ended up surpassing China for most gold medals and most overall medals. So it was from that standpoint, from a success standpoint, it was very successful for the U.S.
For the U.S. for the Olympics. And you're right. I'm not disagreeing there. And I think there has got to be an element to that. The other channels were so focused on COVID. Like I think the whole COVID thing and the Delta variants and all this crap is just keeping people on edge. And they're like, I think they're glued to the news to see what's going on, and it's hard to focus on,
Sure.
something
Yeah.
like the Olympics. So I think that, to your point, I don't think it's a quality. The product was poor quality. I just think there was all these external factors
Mhm.
that made it more challenging, and people were just distracted with so much going on. It's just unfortunate,
Sure.
especially for those poor athletes that you know had their moment in the sun to shine, and they might not be back for the next Olympics. So, this might be it. This might have been their
Right.
only shot to be in the Olympics, and
Right. Well, you only have to wait 3 years for the next Olympics instead of
yeah,
four. So
but the Winter Olympics is
this winter, this
this
year.
coming up winter, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so
A-
hopefully
And
it's
that's
it's
in Beijing, China.
that's in
So
Beijing.
so that's gonna be interesting.
Yeah,
Having it in China and how they're gonna deal with all that with the COVID and everything else. And yeah, it'd be interesting because
and there's
it's
talk about people protesting it and
yeah,
not going. So that might be another thing that's going to be overshadowed with a lot more external noise that for the poor, the distraction
I
for the poor athletes. But you know what? We'll
I'd
save that
like to
Olympic talk
think.
for later.
Yeah, yeah. There we go. We still ended up squeezing it in and talking about it for 10
Bastard,
minutes.
you
But
figured it out.
I like to think the ratings were low because everyone's listening to our podcast, and so they're spending so much time listening to our podcast. Our podcast didn't exist 5 years ago in the last Olympics.
That's
So
probably true. And
that's it.
based on what I saw in the ratings, there, I think we do have a bigger audience that listened to us than actually was watching the
Yeah.
Olympics. So
There you
you never
go.
know. Well, all right. So why don't we? Now the Olympics is over and you have more free time, sports are done. What are you drinking, Big Meat? What do you want to recommend to the people that you're going to be drinking as a
Yes.
beverage?
So I do
Because I'm
believe
still on
we.
mojitos. You know,
Yeah. Oh, you haven't got off that yet. You haven't jumped to another drink yet.
I no no
So you're gonna drink mojitos all summer long, and no,
I
that was it.
I think it might be gin and tonics when we travel together.
Ah, okay. You're going back
Opening.
to you're going back to your original promise that
Yes,
when you were
but
drinking last
right
summer.
now,
Okay.
summer weather, I'm still making some delicious. I've actually, from trial and error, I've mastered it. Like they've been amazing at home from just trial and error. So
Yeah,
I'm very
yeah. I
proud
did
of what I've
actually
done.
have some Hendrix and tonic the other day. Actually,
Oh, very good.
first time in a while. But no, I did want to talk about a vodka, which I don't really talk too much about. I'm not a big vodka drinker. As you know, I love my whiskey, Azar. But I do have to give this one a little bit of a shout out because it's my wife's favorite drink, and it's called Cold River Blueberry Vodka. So Cold River um, makes just regular Cold River vodka, which is okay, but the blueberry vodka is what is my wife's favorite one. So we actually drove up to um, Freeport, Maine, over the last weekend, and that's where the distillery is. So we decided to just drive up there and just pop in and just see, what it's like. And you go up to the top floor, and they have a little like it's like an attic, and they have a little bar there, and you could try out like little samples and whatnot. So they do have obviously the Cold River vodka. They have the Cold River blueberry flavored vodka, and they also make a gin, and that's pretty much it. It's like basically those two vodkas and the gin. And it is a potato vodka, and uh, like I said, it's my wife's favorite drink. She mixes it with a little lemonade, and you're good to go. Their Cold River gin, tried it, not a big fan, but they did have another. vodka that I tried a sample of, and it's called their Distillers Reserve. Um, it had a darker look to it. It wasn't clear like the other vodkas. It's not, it wasn't what you normally see with vodka, and that's because it's aged in oak barrels for 2 years. You get the whole speech from the bartender there giving you the samples. So it had a little bit of that like whiskey flavor to it, and I really liked it. But the bottle went for $70, so I passed. But I would say highly recommended. I think I might, if I do happen to see it in a store or wherever. I mean, I'm gonna end up. I might end up just going all out and just buying a bottle of it because I did like it, and they had the way she served it on the rocks, right? And it went down smooth. Like I said, it had a little bit of a mix of like vodka and whiskey. If you poured it in a glass and didn't tell me what it was, and I took a sip, I would tell you, oh, what kind of whiskey is this? So it was interesting. It was interesting. It's called Distillers Reserve. So
So
something I would recommend.
so it was the oak barrels that they were they whiskey barrels and they just used those, or were they just
Good
regular
question.
barrels?
Good question. I'm not sure. I don't know. You know what? Actually, I took a picture of it and took a picture of the sign that was out. Let me see if I can find it here. But yeah, it was um
$70 is pretty steep, so it has to have something special about the barrels that they're using. It can't be
yeah,
just
it just says vodka finished in oak barrels. That's all I see here. But it's like a darker color to it. It's not what you normally would see in a vodka, right? If you saw a bottle like that, you'd be like, oh, like what kind of is that like cheap vodka? Why does it look like that? But
oh,
that's the
interesting.
reason behind it. Yeah.
Oh, sounds good. Sounds tasty.
Yeah, very good. Right from Freeport, Maine as well.
I'll have to keep an
Good
eye out for
stuff.
that. See if I can see it in the liquor stores that I go to. I
Hmm.
normally stop in and see if it's out there. That might be a nice sipping vodka. I never think of drinking vodka straight. I'm not one of those people. I just never got into it. I know you
Me
can buy
neither.
some high end vodkas. I just
Yeah.
learned that unless if you're mixing it, it just doesn't make sense to buy very expensive vodkas. It's good. You want to have a good vodka, but you don't need to go crazy if you're just gonna. It's like buying a whiskey that you're just gonna bury it in ginger ale. It's like, well, what's the point of buying an expensive whiskey if you're gonna put ginger ale in it or something, right? So,
Yeah. That's how
um,
I feel like vodka is. Vodka is meant to be mixed with something,
yeah, I
right?
just.
You know,
But there are people that drink it straight. Like if you're Russian, you're drinking Stoli straight. I guess I've seen that in movies, but I just can't get myself to do it. I just don't. I used to try to drink Grey Goose straight. Just didn't like it. It's
yeah.
just I don't know. And I don't think vodka has a lot of unless you get the flavored vodkas. Most vodkas don't really have like
They don't have, yeah, they're not meant for their flavor, right?
yeah
It's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. What I
yeah
mean, vodka's what? It's just um water and ethanol. Like that's pretty much it, right? And that's what makes
yeah.
it so clear. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be like it's clear, like you said, unless you get the flavored vodkas. And the blueberry vodka that they have is really good. I actually drank it on one of our podcasts
Oh, I remember you
um,
got pretty
a
drunk on
few
that one.
months ago.
Yeah
Yes, yes, and I did mix it with a little bit of lemonade, and I was sucking that thing back like
yeah
like
yeah.
crazy. It was one of our longer podcasts. I think that was the nearly 3 hour
I
podcast.
do
So
remember that. And I remember your wife being
yes,
mad that you drank her entire bottle of vodka on her. Yes.
yes, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, and I was not feeling so hot the next morning, and it wasn't so much the vodka; it's all the sugar and the lemonade that I was
Yeah,
consuming.
that's the only thing. Like, if you're doing a long day of drinking, vodka and club soda, like flavored club soda, it gives you just a little bit of flavor, but you never really get that hangover because it's just hydrating. Because you're drinking club
Yeah,
soda, it's just water.
yeah,
And you could drink that all day if you're trying to avoid like a headache or a hangover. That's probably the easiest thing to drink. Is low calorie if you're concerned about calories. Um, but for marathon drinking, we always talk about that. If you're doing a marathon drinking, sometimes you got to find the right booze that just doesn't give you a headache. Like Captain and Coke, an all day thing of Captain and Coke can give you a headache. All right. Well, hopefully Big Me can do some good stitching of the audio here because he had to pause. He got thrown out from where he's supposed to be recording. But nothing but pure
seamless.
professionals. It's so.
It's gonna
But
be seamless, Azar. I'm
yeah,
telling you, seamless.
yeah. But we know the clock is ticking on his before he gets kicked out of this other room now.
Like I was saying at the beginning of this podcast, there's no appreciation for our podcasting.
Just
No
once a week.
appreciation.
Once a week, we ask for like 2 hours of just quiet and opportunity. But that's okay.
Exactly.
So we talked about the Cold River blueberry vodka. It's definitely worth a try if you haven't. If you like vodka, just give it a whirl. It's still,
Yeah, it's a little expensive. It is like it depends on where you get it. We've paid some places sell it for as high as $40. My wife has bought it for as cheap as $30.
New Hampshire
And
liquor store usually has a good deal on it, doesn't it?
yeah, usually between $30 and $35. That's kind of what we normally have seen it go for. But
Yeah, that's
yeah,
not terrible for a good quality vodka. It's not terrible, and it's a
yeah.
local vodka too. So that's the other thing too. You're helping a local place. All right, Big Meat. So I did want to touch on this super quick, and we won't go into it a lot, but because it's fresh, the most recent last year we talked about this a lot was the Sego golf tournament, and we just had it this past week. It was a little earlier than past years. I believe it's a week earlier than usual, if I recall. But I just wanted to give a shout out because Jarvis is actually the person that helps put it together, and I was hoping for him to be on the podcast just to give him, some kudos for a job well done. Excellent event, well attended. One of the things that I liked, and I'm not sure if you felt the same way, but I thought there was a great spectrum of people that attended it. You had some really young people that were golfing, all the way to some much older generations of people golfing. So there was a great broad spectrum of people, and it was pretty seamless. And the one thing that I liked, because it was at the Four Oaks Golf Club, I always liked that course, but man, because of all the rain, like everything was overgrown. Like the course was nice, but man, it felt like you couldn't see things because there was so much shrubbery and like I lost balls that I knew where I hit it. It was on the edge of the course, and I'm like, where the hell's the ball go? And it was just because everything was so thick, you couldn't find it, and there was so much poison ivy. So that was a kind of a downer on the thing, but
Yeah, it was a little wet. It was a little wet. I know from all the rain, right there. I mean, I remember walking by one of the bunkers, and it was like a pond. There was a pond in it.
Yeah, the sand trap. It had a pond in the middle of the sand trap. It was so bizarre. Yeah, it was interesting. You had a water hazard in a sand trap. So you don't see that every day.
That's right. Oh, imagine getting it. I know, and that was one of those holes. It was right around where you drive it, like right before the green. Like it was like I'm sure a lot of people hit their balls into that.
Well, you know what? In this course, it has like a lot of these like between the fairway. There's always like this like cut across where there's either water and a lot of shrubbery, like that you always have to clear with your clubs. You have to like play it well and clear that mess in the middle of the fairway. But I think because everything was so overgrown, some of it was so thick and wired, and you like, and sometimes you couldn't even see beyond it. Like you were like, all right, I'm going to hit straight and just hope that it hits. And then you go and you think you cleared it, and there's just so much overgrowth. Like, oh, I didn't clear it. Like I must have landed in the brush. So it was a tough. I felt like the course was tougher this time around. But
yeah, I noticed the first half when it was still a little cool out and the grass was still a little wet and the ball wouldn't roll as much.
Yeah.
And then the second back nine, everything was rolling. Like it was sort of like night and day. But yeah, I thought it was a good event. Our boy Jarvis did a good job. Maybe not as good of a job as Pork Chop when he did it the first year, but Jarvis he's getting better. He's getting better. He's been doing this now, 10 years now? Yeah. So he's getting there. He's getting there. A little bit more experience.
The one thing that I did want to give him props on, and it's not because of him, but the ladies that they recruited to help out, I thought the best part about it, because they've always had people that ladies from the local sororities that have always helped out and did with the fundraising and stuff like that. But the fact that the girls coordinated in golfing outfits, it just made it look more professional. Like I was it looked more classier, like because the girls put like a little effort and they coordinated their outfits to be matching golfing outfits. And I was like, that's a nice touch. They were all done. So I would tell Jarvis, I would tell him to bring those girls back just because they got into the right attitude. And I thought they were they were good. I thought their personalities fit, to help sell and fundraise and stuff like that. They were good sports, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah. I didn't even notice that. I mean, I know that they had the matching outfits, but I didn't realize in years past that it wasn't always like that.
No,
you just always assume that that's what they're supposed to do. But Yeah, so I guess you make a good point.
Yeah,
They seem like they knew what they were doing.
yeah,
So
they added a nice
there
touch.
you
It made
go.
it look a little bit more classy of a tournament. I know the golf cart girl, like they were short down to one person. One person called out sick, and
Yeah.
the one person that called that actually showed up had no personality. Which at a golf
Mhm.
course, you're like, geez, just you have to have some person. Like you want to actually
Yeah.
be working because you are getting paid on tips. Like you think she would have made more of an effort,
Mhm.
but
We
that's
only
hey,
saw her once or twice. It wasn't like,
yeah, just lack of
just barely
effort.
came by. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel
No
like
effort.
the year before, I think the girl wanted to make money. She was like hitting everybody up like just
Right.
constantly. She was just that's how they make their money. So I don't know. This girl like did not want to be there for some reason, and it's
I
just like
agree.
it's just kind of odd. But the only feedback I would give on the thing is I love the at the Four Oaks when they do the meal. They used to do steak tips in the past. And my only feedback, and I've seen this with other charity events, and you might have too, because you've done charity golf tournaments before. I feel sometimes with some charity events, because cost keeps going up, sometimes the coordinators tend to cut things out because they
Mhm.
want to try to raise the same amount of money, but they got to kind of balance and kind of cut things that maybe they would have done in the past to save money. And I've seen it so many times. My only advice I would say to Jarvis and his committee is maybe consider instead of cutting back, and doing like cutting back on some things, maybe just charge more. I think the group 80% of the people there are all like business professionals. If you told them you got to pay an extra $10 to
Mm.
kind of get it to get more high quality, like have steak tips. I think this time we did it like an Italian thing. I was looking forward to a steak tip meal like in years past, right? Remember how we've done
Yeah.
that before? So that's my only thing. I would tell them like, don't be afraid to up the price if you need to have it to maintain a certain level of standard or
Yeah.
quality because I think most people understand everything's getting more expensive. I just wouldn't don't cut back like and don't do what's other because that has turned me off in some charity events where you feel like you're getting less but you're spending the same amount of money because they're trying to balance cost and
Right.
fundraising and so that's the only thing I would say is don't be afraid if you went $5, $10. I think
Right.
to cover something. That's just my only feedback. I don't know if you noticed
Well,
the same thing or felt the same way, but
yeah, well, I mean, you're talking five or $10, and that if that's going to cover the cost to have steak tips or something like that in the meal, then that's fine. But I know from other charity tournaments that I've been at, I mean, what we pay 150, I believe, was per person. It's still pretty cheap compared to some other
oh yeah,
ones that
yeah.
I've done, and of course, at the end of the day, right? I mean, is there a hole where you can win a car on a par three course, right? A hole in one? No, there wasn't that. There wasn't, some of the charity, the raffle prizes, you know, it's a lot of autographed pictures of stuff. I mean, you go to some of these other bigger ones where you're paying $250. There's like golf bags. There's irons. There's some major like stuff there that they're giving away. So I would actually be okay with even upping it to 200 or even maybe even 250. I mean, you might get a few of the people that just kind of bail out because of the cost is lower, but if you're making those promises to say, hey, these are the additional things that we're going to do. We're going to have enough sausages for everybody. Something even like that, just to make sure you're covering all your bases. So people say, hey, this was going to be the best one yet. Hey, I'll spend an extra $50 or $100 to that I normally pay to go to this one. I ended up stopping going to a lot of those other ones because I felt like it was too expensive. Sure, like $250. Um, and I figured like, you could go play 4 rounds of golf for that kind of money. But I think this event is a little different, right? Because most of the people that play in it are from the fraternity. I think they're more than willing to spend that extra money to attend this. You might not get a lot of outside people, but I don't even know what the percentage, a small percentage of people that are not in the fraternity to come and play at this thing. I would just say up the cost. Azar, you'll be happy with the steak tips. I'll be happy with the extra sausages halfway through the golf tournament. We have better prizes to give away. I think in years past they had breakfast sandwiches in the morning. This year was more of like a continental breakfast. So you can actually get a few more things in there and still probably end up making even more money.
Yeah, yeah, it's something to consider. I know again, I started mentioning it, the age spectrum. You try to get the younger guys. Some of them recently graduating college, so they might not have the money. So there is that balance of trying to keep it. But yeah, I wouldn't maybe jump from 150 to 250 right away, but maybe go in increments and see. All right, if we go up an extra $25, what more can we do with the money that we raised to maintain what we want to make, but also have more perks and keep it more fresh? And again, that's just feedback for someone that's been part of a lot of fundraisers and events that I had to help coordinate. And there's something that I see a lot of times: people start cutting back when they try to do that balancing act of fundraising, but trying to make it good, and the costs are going up because these events, these people aren't stupid. They're going to keep raising prices. They're going to pass the buck on to you as the event host, and you got to make up that money somewhere. But anyways, that's just constructive feedback. Again, I don't put it together, so I don't know the logistics. I'm sure there's a lot more work and stuff that we're not exposed to. But again, we're just kind of coming out and telling you, if you need to ask us to come up with a little bit more money to raise the bar a little bit, to make it even more exciting, I think you'll probably get a good turnout of people say, yeah, I'm definitely in. Because it's this, for me, it's one of the biggest events that I look forward to. So if you don't go to it, or maybe in years past you just don't prioritize it, you gotta give it another chance. Like, I think it's just a shame that for the people that don't go. I mean, I mark it on my calendar. As soon as the new year starts for work, I already blocked that day off. As soon as I hear about it, I take a vacation day. And I can't. I find it hard to believe people don't have enough vacation days to say, I'm just taking this one day. Even you don't have to be a great golfer. I mean, this year we saw.
You should have seen how we played.
Yeah. Yeah. And then with a team ahead of us that we know were cheating, despite they were, hitting it into the woods, but they were still 2 under the whole time. The funny
Nonsense.
math, a little bit of discrepancies from R3 when he's saying he's a couple under, but
and then you look at the foursome that they were with, and you're like, really?
Yep. And you're seeing all of them just shanking it all over the place, and then one of them was just barely sober playing, and he was attacking the ball.
One of them actually stole my ball that I hit and hit it under a divot, and it took us 10 minutes to try to find it. We still couldn't find it. It's still probably sitting there on a hole 13 or whatever the hole that was.
Yeah, he was so perplexed. We couldn't find a ball that was covered. Of course, I think you were playing the green ball at that time, or was it the orange ball?
It was the green one. It was the fluorescent green one. Yep. And we couldn't even find that one, and it was like a million divots over there, and so we ended up picking every single one of them up. But
it was a hot mess. But it was a good time. Yeah. Anyways, if you take away from it, it was a great time. So I just want to give props.
Great time. But and they did have 29 teams this year, so it was. I think I heard they were one shy of the record. I think they were one shy of breaking the record for the most teams that they've ever had. So. They did something right. They had a lot of people, and hopefully next year they'll be well into the 30s.
Yeah, it was a great event, and and the good thing about this year that I'm not sure why it was different, because the problem with the Four Oaks is they book another tournament right after this one. So you feel like in years past they were kind of rushing us to get off the course. Like, oh, you had to be right off the course at a certain time. And I was afraid of that because we were running a little bit behind because we got bottlenecked with some groups. But it looked like they let everybody finish. Like there were people coming in after us that were still golfing when we were driving back after we finished. And those people came in much later. So they didn't get kicked off the course, which I think that course, I don't know, what are they called? Course managers, marshal, what are they called? The guy that oversees the course, whatever. R3 was here to be screaming at me right now, but yeah. But that guy was actually cool about it. He wasn't a jerk kicking people.
No, he wasn't. But I think too, when we got back to the clubhouse, it was there was still a line. Like the carts were ready to go. They were all lined up, but there were nobody in the carts. Like I felt like maybe the group after us maybe showed up a little bit later, or people were running later. They were running behind for whatever reason. So that probably had something to do with it. But they also didn't have GPSs in the carts. In years past, those GPSs always kind of went off a little and said, all right, head back to the clubhouse. And,
that's true.
And this time there was nobody. Like, what are they going to do? Drive around and tell everybody, like, hey, beat it?
That is true. I didn't think about that. That's right, because they did harass you through the thing until you get back. But I remember last year, the guy was a different guy that was just driving around. He was kind of a jerk about it. Like, like we felt rushed. Sure. But anyways, I digress. All right, let's move away from the golf tournament. Jarvis isn't here to discuss it, but we just wanted to give some feedback while it was fresh in people's mind. And we know some of the people that listen to this podcast didn't get to go this year, so just give them the feedback that it was a good time. They missed a good time. All right,
basically tell those guys stop being cheapskates and sign up for next year.
I didn't want to say it, but yes,
cheap bastards.
Yeah, it's because of you. I didn't have steak tips. We needed 4 more people. Probably could have covered the expense of the cheese.
Exactly. Well, now if you're talking about cheesesteaks, that now replace the sausages with cheesesteaks. Okay, now I'm willing to pay $300.
All right, there you go.
Just for the cheesesteak.
There's some good feedback. Can we get cheesesteaks instead of
the Market Basket cheesesteaks?
Just grab one of those people. Hey, what's this person here? He's a ringer. Don't worry. He works at Market Basket. He makes the best cheesesteak. Come in here and do your thing. Yeah, that poor lady that was doing the sausages. I don't want to see her making cheesesteaks. She'd probably just drop dead.
Yeah, I know.
So, anyways,
she was struggling a little bit.
I got to share this highlight or one thing from a quote from Jarvis, because there were these kids that lived apart in the complex, like that were part of the, I don't know, they lived right across from the golf course, and they were selling golf balls that they found for $1 a piece, and they're walking around. And then when I was, I felt, for the kids, I appreciated their, their
ambition, their ambition,
yeah,
their
exactly.
hustle, their
entrepreneurship. That was the word.
Yes,
I was like, entrepreneurship.
Yes.
I liked it. So they were using the money so they can go buy snacks where we were getting our sausages. The lady was selling it to them. So I gave the kids, I wasn't going to eat the chips. I gave the little girl the chips and whatever. And I think someone else, Bobby.
Yeah, we did. I gave my chips. Yeah, I gave my chips away. Sure.
So the guy, Jarvis, who writes the checks, the money man, we're walking back to the car and he goes, "What are you feeding the wildlife for?" You know what it does? It just encourages them to keep coming back.
These poor little girls, right? They're so sweet. They're so polite, well-mannered.
They weren't even harassing
you. Thank you. And yeah. And then, I offered, I think actually COVID Boy gave him one of our hot dogs.
That's right.
Yeah, he gave him one of the hot dogs as well. I offered to buy, because they didn't have enough money to buy drinks. And I said, I'll buy the drinks. And the lady, at the grill there said that there weren't enough drinks back there. So I said,
okay.
whatever.
Kind of cheap, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
So she must recognize the girls because they must do it all the time. So
probably just shoo them away. Yeah.
But the fact he called them wildlife, I was just like, oh, that made me laugh. But it was definitely the quote.
It's like, don't feed the pigeons.
Yeah, exactly. What a monster. All right. Anyways, what do you want to dive into? Suicide Squad or Hard Knocks? Where do you want to start? We got to pick up our pace here. We're kind of.
Yeah. Well, how about if I leapfrog you there and spend a quick 30 seconds to just mention the new Marvel show. So there's the new Marvel animated show called What If. It just came out today. First episode. There are 9 episodes to it. Like I said, first one came out today. It's animated. However, it is canon. It's been confirmed that it's canon, so it's part of the whole Marvel universe, much like how the Star Wars animated shows are, right? Because it's all kind of connected to it. And it's just, I'm not going to give anything away, but it's really kind of just based off the whole multiverse that started with Loki. So it's all the different scenarios that would have happened if different timelines. And the first episode was instead of Captain America Steve Rogers turning into Captain America, it was Peggy Carter. She was the new Captain America. So it was well done. It was it's the old-fashioned hand-drawn animation, but I thought it was good. Like I said, there's 9 episodes, each episode having a different character in each one. So it's not all about Peggy Carter. It's
oh, that's pretty cool.
Today's episode was just on Peggy Carter. They called her Captain Carter. And then the next episode next week when it comes out, I forget which one it is, but it's on a different character for each one. So kind of an interesting take on it.
That's pretty cool. Okay, we'll have to dive into that. So that sounds interesting. So I wanted to just touch on, because you didn't have a chance to watch Suicide Squad, so I'll let you watch it first for a full review. Sure. I'm gonna say you're gonna see, which is so confusing to me, if you research Rotten Tomatoes or whatever on like how did the Suicide Squad 2 movie do, I was surprised that the score was over 90% for Rotten Tomatoes score for that movie. It was well received, well liked. It had to be the worst movie I've ever watched. And I just don't get what the critics are seeing and liking about it. It is not your traditional DC superhero movie. It was more of a almost like a comedy, like a spoof on a superhero movie. It was bizarre to me. It's almost like watching, like it's like watching Spaceballs, and saying, "Wow, that was so much better than Star Wars." That's basically what apples to apples is. It's just that's how far off the movie went from the traditional Suicide Squad that we watched. Um, what is that? 2016, I think it came out originally. 2016 or something around that timeline.
Yeah, roughly.
So, so if you're going in with the mentality you're looking for a good superhero movie, it's not that. It's actually more of a silly kind of like meant to be almost like a cult classic kind of like weird goofy movie. I don't. It's. I'll let you watch it. I don't want to put spoilers in.
It's disheartening.
It just I didn't understand
to hear that
why they went that direction. It's just so confusing, and I've been trying to read Screen Rant stuff on it and trying to understand why they went that direction. But
would you say I did not watch it, but would you say with the first one was a little silly, but it was a little dark as well. And was this one like just not dark? Did it have any of that? Any of that tone? I know different directors and everything, but
no, it was. It's tough to explain. Like the characters they selected from the DC universe to be the villains that were just these odd characters that made no sense. Sylvester Stallone was a talking shark.
I know that. Yeah,
it was just bizarre. The one villain was shot polka dots out of his hands.
Yeah.
I just when someone says you're the polka dot man and you're just watching it, you're like, I just don't understand.
Well, I think it's meant to be kind of silly like that, though, right? I mean, they're all like,
John Cena's in it, so right there, just the credibility of the movie went down. And
I thought just him alone and himself would just carry the movie.
He didn't. No, he didn't. and Idris Elba wasn't a good superhero. He just didn't. Yeah. He just. It was, but again, I think that it was done on purpose. It was meant to be silly, overacting,
the Island of Misfits kind of deal, right? Because is it supposed to be like they're so bad as villains that that's why they hire them to basically go into these missions, because they're like, well, you know what? They're kind of like useless people, and it's like if they get killed, they get killed. Who cares? Like, no one's gonna miss them. Isn't that kind of like, so the point of it's like they're kind of like they're not supposed to be these great villains or villains with these great superpowers or anything like that?
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you the best way to describe it. When you were watching Deadpool, right? Deadpool is a funny action movie, right? Mm-hmm. Remember when he built his team of what did he call his in Deadpool 2? He had a name for his team that he put together. I forget it, but remember, like when they jumped out of the airplane, one guy went into like a wood chipper, and another guy got electrocuted.
Right. Yeah. There was the lucky girl, the other girl that I was like,
yeah, exactly. So
just all based it on luck. Yeah.
So think of that as a whole movie of that, where a band of people get put together. They're really super silly, and they have the most oddest deaths happen to them as superheroes. And you're like, so it's got that. It's almost like, I guess that's probably the closest thing I can say. It's got that Deadpoolish silliness from Deadpool 2, where it was so silly, but it wasn't as funny. Like Deadpool was so much more funnier than.
That's too bad.
Like it failed to be even that funny. Like I didn't get it. Like I'm like, are you trying to be funny? Well, you're not being good at being funny. Like it's just tough.
And not even Margot Robbie could save it either, huh?
No, they didn't. They didn't. Robbie. They had her in it, but they didn't really. Unlike Suicide Squad, where the first one where they focused on her, like she was a big character in it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't her. She wasn't the focus of the thing.
Really?
Yeah, there was a girl with a talking rat, or a rat that talks to the girl. That she was like the main woman in it. and she was homely looking because she lives with rats. So it was
So
yeah,
so maybe this is a wait till Redbox or when it comes out on
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
So
I If you have HBO Max, watch it. I mean, it's like I said, it's stupid funny, or it's a
yeah,
stupid movie. Like it's nothing. You're not
that's
gonna
true. I
get
could watch
lost.
it on HBO Max. You're right. Yeah, so I do. Unlike Jarvis, who does not have HBO
Yeah,
Max.
the things he spends his money on, he just won't. He doesn't spend on entertainment. So,
That's
but
right.
eventually he will. Eventually he'll have to break down because a lot of the movies are just being released on that platform. So,
Yeah.
anyways, we'll spend a lot of time on it. Yeah, let's just go into real quick. Hard Knocks. I haven't had a chance to watch a full episode, so this will lead right into our NFL segment.
Yeah.
Um, so far so good. I liked it. A little confused about the opening with Jerry Jones crying that he was there. Like it was kind of weird to me. Like
I
he's.
did. I was a little confused. I was like, wait a minute, is he crying? Like,
I
why
thought
is
he
he
was going to
crying?
say
What's
he
he
was
crying
dying
about?
or something. Like I was waiting for them to say, well, he just got diagnosed with cancer or something.
Yeah.
Like it almost felt like this was his last preseason. I was
Yeah,
like,
I couldn't tell if he was crying because the fans were coming back because of COVID, and he was almost like a it was like I don't know, tears of joy kind of thing, or was it because he was talking about how they haven't won in so many years, and he's desperate
20,
now to win
20
a Super
plus
Bowl, and
years.
it's
It's
like
crazy.
26 years.
Yeah. Oh my God.
For a franchise that has who is the most lucrative franchise, right? The most valuable sports franchise. I think, well, maybe not sport. I think there's a couple of soccer teams that might be higher than the Cowboys, but they definitely are the highest
No,
in the
we're talking about
NFL.
real sports. For a real sport, yes, the highest
Well,
real sport. That
well, in
yes,
terms of value, right? I mean, you
yeah,
gotta factor all the other the
yeah. Wait,
sports
I don't factor soccer.
organizations as well, but in the NFL at least, and so he and for the so they for not being able to win a Super Bowl in 26 years. Man, you're doing something wrong there. Because I mean, I get it. There's like, salary caps and whatnot, but when you have that much money, you would think you would go out and spend it on, the best facilities, the best, everything. You hire the best coaches, you pay whatever you want. You can throw money anywhere, and players see that and they'll want to come and play for you. And because they're there, they have the best facilities, they have the best everything. You would think that they would win it at least once in a while. It's like they don't even come close. They haven't been in the Super Bowl since then. It's crazy. It's crazy. But anyway, I know I'm going off on a tangent here with the whole Hard Knocks episode. But yeah, but
Yeah,
I'll let
but it
you.
was so far so good though. I mean, I'm halfway through it, and from a fantasy perspective, it was nice seeing Dak Prescott. I mean, he opened on
Yeah,
Dak Prescott's injury, but watching him do his exercises and routines, and actually seeing him. And that's where I was going to get your thoughts on this. This is the only thing I would take away from that episode is they're trying to keep Dak Prescott like almost like on a pitch count, right? But for a football player, like how many snaps he's going to take and things during preseason, and he's frustrated with that. You could tell that he's getting a little anxious about like, why are you not letting me work the rust out now? Like, let me just get in there. I'm fine. I'll tell you if I'm sore.
mm-hmm.
And I'm watching that and I'm thinking the same thing. Like that makes me a little nervous from a drafting perspective. Is he going to get the rust out? If they're holding him back, if they get this attitude like, hey, we're going to take it slow, we don't want him to get injured,
mm.
is he going to be ready for the start of the season? Is he going to have enough
Mm.
rust? He's looking good, but anything in Hard Knocks, like everybody always looks wonderful on Hard Knocks. They're
Yeah,
only taking like the plays that are made and stuff. They're not showing you all the drop passes or shit passes or whatever. But
right.
so
I
he looks electric and looks awesome, but you're like, this is all edited. So
I would be worried about that if this was still being talked about by the fourth episode. By the end of the preseason at the after training camp. This was the first episode with the first camp. Like they didn't have pads on it at that point, right? And they were kind of holding him back a little bit. So,
yeah,
they showed a replay of that injury and they had different angles of it. And I remember his injury being bad,
it
but
was
you saw
gross.
certain angles of it. You're like,
Yeah,
wow, his ankle was pointing like the complete opposite way. And he, I mean, that's a major injury that happened last October. It was like, yeah, last October. I think they said October 11th. And here we are. I mean, when they aired that episode, right, they filmed it in late July, last week of July, maybe even first couple days of August, first week of August. I mean, less than a year later for him to be moving around like that, it's kind of impressive for him to come back like that. But
Yeah.
I can understand the coaching staff saying, "Hey, let's bring him along a little bit slowly." And I don't even think he even got to this point of the episode. He ended up like straining his shoulder. And I know
Oh,
this has been talked about in the news as well, so this isn't anything new, but he ended up straining his shoulder. So they had to like sit him out for that as well. So, completely different injury, but
that's what I mean. I wonder. It's going to take him time to get
yeah,
in.
yeah, I think they touched on this in the episode as well. They're the only team that plays 4 preseason games.
Oh, why's
Everybody
that?
else plays 3 because I think they just opened the season in the Hall of Fame game, and maybe Washington, or who did open the season? Who did they play at Pittsburgh? Maybe
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh is the other team that also plays 4, but because they started last week, they had to play those 3 extra games for
Oh, I
whatever
understand.
reason. They get 4 preseason games, so they have more than enough time for Dak Prescott to
Yeah.
play in those games.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to watching the episode. But and the other thing too, I'll close on this one on Dak Prescott is you do want to root for him. Like you do feel bad. Like the
Yeah,
guy went through, lost his brother to suicide and all that, and he's trying to get back from an injury. Like you want to root for the guy, and like he seems like a likable character that you can root for and hope that he comes back and bounce. You don't want to see the guy's career end and can never be back to normal. That just sucks to go out that way. Um, Ezekiel Elliott still seems. I find him like he looks like a great running back, and I'm not like his talent is there. Man, he's such a weird dude. Like I was just
he
watching
is
him, and I'm like, you're tough to root for.
oddball.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
so weird. He's so goofy. He's not like he's a bad person. He just seems so goofy. Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And Dak and Zeke were our best friends. I mean, I knew they were friends. I didn't know they were like
yeah,
best friends.
super close.
You
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
So yeah, and the episode it was the first one I know, but those are the 2 big featured names. They're the big players, right? They're the big names on the team. But Hard Knocks is usually meant for like rookies and like undrafted guys that come in and try to make the team, and it's more of a story around them. Whereas this episode, the season's kicked it off, and we're like, nope, we're going to focus mostly on Dak and Ezekiel Elliott. Another name I was intrigued by was Micah Parsons, their first round pick. We talked a lot about him earlier this year during our NFL draft talk. He looks smaller than I thought, but he looks quick as hell. He was the only like rookie. He's the only other player that they actually talked about.
well, you talking about CC Lamb.
Episode.
CC Lamb was in there. They showed some
Yeah,
highlights of him.
CD
I
Lamb, but yeah,
CD Lamb. Sorry, CC. Why? I don't know why I was thinking CC. CD
CD
Lamb.
Lamb, a little bit, very little bit. Not
But he's
they didn't.
taller than I thought he was. I didn't
Yeah,
realize how tall CD Lamb was. Like
yeah,
he's
yeah, and I think they're going to talk about him more in the next episode, and a little bit less about Dak and Zeke, because that's what they do. They start talking about all these like rookie guys with great personalities, right? Because they want to feature those guys in the show, and so it's. I mean, if you haven't watched Hard Knocks before, I mean, it's so great. It gives you a little bit of insight to some stuff that's going on behind the scenes, and it's entertaining as hell, right? And and they don't hold back, right? There's f bombs, like they say whatever they want on it. It's great. It's
yeah. No,
it's it's really
it's
good.
it gets you into the mood. It gets you even more in the mood for the
Yeah,
NFL season. I get more into the mood watching Hard Knocks compared to watching preseason games. Preseason games are fun, but it's always like the backups. I just
yeah.
I just like sitting back, and you can get it on demand. Like you don't have to like watch it the day it comes out. It's kind of pretty cool. Uh, so I just wanted to touch real quick because man, this episode was the time is flying by. So 3 things of the news that caught my attention that just came out from Adam Schefter just announced. I'm not sure if he was retweeting it or whatever from somebody else, but I saw it on Adam Schefter's Twitter feed. Carson Wentz and I think what's his name, Quentin Nelson, the guard for Indianapolis. It looks like now they're saying they're going to be ready for the start of the season. So does that change the fact that Carson Wentz might be ready for the start of the season?
Well, they said
Does
they could be ready for the
could
start
be
of the
ready
season.
now?
There's a possibility.
So let me ask you: if you're knowing that, does it change your feelings about Jonathan Taylor? Because we're
It
gonna go
does,
into our top
sure,
12,
but
but I'm just
if
throwing that in that. You don't have to like go fully into the details because we're gonna talk about the top
yeah,
12.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that is interesting news because that was a fear is if they don't have a quarterback at all,
Right.
and it's just on the back of Jonathan Taylor, like that seems like a heavy load.
Yeah,
That's
and
a
it's
heavy
not like
lift.
yeah, and it's not like they ever had a good backup QB there, unless they ended up signing somebody. But yeah, I mean, if we had the draft tonight, I'd still be a little wary. But having our draft at the end of this month, we'll have a little bit more time to figure out if Wentz really is gonna. If Wentz is starting week 1, and we know that for sure, then yeah, then
So he moves up in your ranking.
oh,
He'll go up in your
absolutely.
top.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
for sure,
All right.
100%.
So here's another one. Matt LaFleur just came out and said Rodgers will not play any preseason games. He's not going to play any. Does that make you a little nervous?
It does. It does
That's
make me nervous because I mean, why would he not want him to play any preseason games?
maybe he just maybe Rodgers said, "Look, I've been doing this for a long like he's turning into Tom Brady." Remember when Tom Brady just didn't want to be
Yeah,
showing up to
not play.
camps and like
Yeah,
maybe
but is it Rodgers saying that or is it the coaches saying that? Like you don't know. Is Rodgers coming out saying I don't want to play in any preseason games?
this one only showed Matt LaFleur. I like if Rodgers won't be shy to comment if someone comes
No.
up and puts a microphone. So I'll be curious. But that makes me nervous that he's not going to get his reps in, and not that he's injured or anything, but it's just interesting. Well,
Yeah.
how is he going to start the season off? Is it going to be a lot of rust? Like, is he game ready? But he's been
Yeah.
doing it for so long, and he is talented. So I don't know that for someone where in
Yeah.
my position where I could potentially draft Devonte Adams because he might be where I am drafting. It makes me a little like, oh, I kind of want to hopefully see you guys have that connection and
Mm,
you guys are working the rust off. I don't want to wait 3 weeks for
right.
Aaron Rodgers to get into a rhythm. I want him to be in a rhythm by week 1. So it's a little
Well, it'll be
concerning.
it'll be similar to last year when there were no preseason games, right? And
Yeah,
it was just like every player was just like we have no idea what to expect from anybody,
exactly.
and we just went into the draft kind of blind. But yeah, that does kind of because I think it does help. They need at least a little bit of game action to get into the flow of things. But
Yeah,
again, though, I mentioned it last week. It is Aaron Rodgers.
yeah, but
If we were talking about anybody else,
I just
if we were
don't
talking
think.
about if we were talking about Dak Prescott, and now he didn't play in the first preseason game, but he's got 3 more to go, and the plan is for him to play at least a little bit. If they came out and said Dak Prescott wasn't playing in any preseason games, then I'd be worried about drafting him. Like
Yeah,
then I'd be like, hey, like I need to see him play. Like he got a big injury last year, and he's a middle of the road quarterback at this point. Right? He's not Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has been playing for 16 years, so you would think like he'd be ready. But I still think it does drop him down a tick.
yeah. You just don't want to see that, and that goes back to Carson Wentz. If Carson Wentz can't do a preseason game, like he's not even going to be in a game, not even see any game time action through the whole preseason because he was injured.
Right.
That just changes my feeling. Like I'd still be nervous. Like, all right, he's going to come off. He's going to a new team, and he's not going to have had any game experience going into the season, and no like chemistry with the receivers or like that makes me nervous for him in that team now. Like
Yeah, yeah. Mostly about with Jonathan Taylor. I think. I mean,
everybody else doesn't really.
Wentz. Yeah, everybody's like whatever. A couple of decent receivers. Is T.Y. Hilton even still on the team?
He's still there, but yeah, it's just
Um, yeah. So it's like, oh, whatever. But Jonathan Taylor's the big one, right? And he's a guy where I'm picking 7th, you're picking 9th. Like that's kind of where he's going.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
do we take that risk there? I don't know. Yeah,
So
that's
so two things in news that could impact us draft day, like making our decisions a little
yes.
like I don't like that. All right. So the
Hmm.
third one is more for the Patriots fans. Um, Hunter Henry being hurt already is kind of just like that just sucks. Like you don't want to see him get injured already. Might be out a couple weeks going into the season. So
Right.
now Cam Newton has another excuse. Like, oh my God, well, he doesn't have all his weapons or some nonsense. Like if he's Cam Newton starts. But I was just wondering, now that Hunter Henry's out of the picture, does that really bump up Jono Smith's value? Like, would you target him more earnestly or
Yeah.
aggressively? With Hunter
Um,
Henry, because he's going to get more looks and reps much earlier now with Cam Newton and stuff. He's going to get full Cam Newton's attention as a tight end. Um, does that
yeah.
does that increase his average draft position? Like, would you take him
Sure.
earlier?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think if there's I mean, if Henry's projected to miss 2 games, say, right? I mean, it's only 2 games, but still,
No preseason. Like he's out.
yeah, that's true. I mean, there was always, you think like the tight end rankings, right? Obviously, there's Kelsey, there's Kittle, there's Waller, there's Andrews. It's like all the big, and then it's like you get into like Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. Who would be the first guy to be taken if Henry never got hurt? Who would be the guy that would go first? I don't know. Like I thought about that, and I'm like, I don't know. Now with Henry even missing 1 game, it's got to be Jonnu, right? Jonnu would be the first one before anybody would take Henry,
But
right?
I'm,
I
I'm
mean,
I'm more focused not even just missing the game, just missing most of the preseason games. He's injured. He's out. So
sure, you
he's
don't
not
know
getting.
what to expect from him. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, he needs those reps with
Yeah.
the
No
with his new
chemistry.
team. Yeah,
Yeah. It's just kind of it. That's big. That changes someone's value. And I think John Smith went up, and I
it
think Hunter
does.
Henry might slide a little just because
Yeah,
you know.
I do really like. I had John Smith last year. I do like him, and I love his attitude. Like I love everything he's saying about New England. He's so happy to be a Patriot. He's like gonna come in and he's gonna work his ass off. I mean, just he's saying all the right things, right? He's just got a kind of a like a good attitude where he's just going to come in and just do whatever it takes. And I love that. I love that. You don't really hear that much. Like Hunter Henry, like I don't think he's even said anything about
Yeah.
anything. So if he takes this opportunity and runs with it, he could end up having a big year. Jonnu Smith could be a sleeper,
Now
not a
I wonder.
sleeper, but like he could end up being like a top 3 tight end.
Yeah. If you draft John Smith in the sixth, seventh round, and he finishes as a top five tight end for you,
Yeah.
that's good value. Like you're gonna get that's getting your money's worth out of a tight end because they're so hit and miss. Unless you get like a Kelsey or a Kittle or
Hmm.
a Waller, I think those are like the three big names that.
Yeah.
Um,
Those guys always get drafted high, and then every other tight end goes like
exactly.
way later in the
Yeah.
draft. So
Yeah. So that'd be if he finishes in the top three with those guys, that kind of production, that's a huge steal.
hmm
All right. So that's the news. So if you guys haven't been paying attention, those are some three big things that came out. So let's just dive in big meat. We started the process. We did the quarterbacks last week. Now let's touch on the running backs. And I know our third man Jarvis always asks why 10? Why are we doing 12 people? And I think 12 is just a common draft size that people do. Like that's the size of most leagues. We're just kind of odd that we just do 10 people. But I
hmm
think 12. I would love to kind of go do an episode like, all right, here's the top 12. We know who they are. Who do you think are your later like backs that you would take, like the last
hmm
eight? Let's get the top 20 or top 24,
yeah.
backs. I'd love to do like some time on that because those are the trickier ones. Who's down in the bucket
Who,
that you
who's
can
your who's your dark horse? Is
dark
is
horse? Yeah,
basically
yeah,
what you're saying?
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
in this environment, I don't like to use those words. I'm a little nervous to use anything dark or so. Um,
I've been
but yes,
hearing a lot of that. I've been hearing that come up a lot in a lot of articles and like fantasy football shows. Like, who's the dark horse of the year? And
yeah.
that's the name that Jarvis made fun of me about last year. Like dark horse. Like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? You never heard of dark horse before?
Ugh.
So,
Jarvis,
but yeah,
he's he's such a he's so critical on things, and it's just like if he doesn't approve it, he thinks it's nuts. But anyways, uh, so let's start. So this one's. I was talking to a coworker about this. This one's tricky. Who is the number one back this year? Who's going off the board?
I think it's got to be CMC.
Even with
He's
all the
just
unknowns,
Yeah,
comes
he's
from an
so
injury.
good. There was some unknowns last year too, and even the year before that, and he was still just every time he was on the field, he was dominant. It's got to be him. I mean, imagine
So,
passing up like on Christian McCaffrey, and he stays healthy, and he has the type of year he did like 2 years ago. Like
so, so Mr. Roper in our league has the number one pick.
yep,
Let me ask you, he's all about the safe pick. If he's
yep.
picking for, I'm sure he's got he's got heartburn right now. He's probably sucking back in acids
That's
because
why
he's
we haven't heard
stressed
from him.
because he's got to this pick has to be right because he knows he'll be mocked viciously
hmm
for screwing up because there's a lot of pressure as the number one pick. So I don't know if he'll be 100% comfortable taking CMC. Is there something that would keep him from taking it?
I think the only so there's pros and cons, right? The only way he would not take him is the injury risk. That's it. That's it. I mean, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is or whatever. It's just an injury risk. I think the reason why he would take him is the risk reward. He doesn't like. You're right. He likes the safe players, but I think there's a risk reward ratio here that, and the reward far outweighs the risk. I think that's how he looks at it, and he says he's going to probably look at it and say, I'm going to go for bust here. I'm going to take CMC. Hope he stays healthy. And if he does, he's golden. And if not, he comes in last place again for the third time in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
I just have to make sure I throw that in there.
Yeah.
So when
Well,
he's listening, he understands.
he's comfortable in the toilet bowl.
Yes.
So the only player, and I think this would be my number 2, is I don't know if he's a completely safe pick, but when you look at what he did in fantasy production and the team around him, Dalvin Cook is the only guy that could challenge that spot, because like from a fantasy point perspective, Derrick Henry led the league for us in the Yahoo fantasy scoring system at 314 points, right? Dalvin Cook finished at 293. Oh no, wait a minute. He was higher than 314. I got that wrong. But anyways, I think Derrick Henry was like 50 points higher than everybody else. But Dalvin Cook finished at 293. He was the number 3 running back in the league. Oh no, there it was 314. I wrote it down correctly. So he wasn't that far off from the production from who the number 1 running back of the year was, Derrick Henry, at 314. Dalvin Cook finished at 293. Is he a safer pick at number 1?
Dalvin Cook. I like Dalvin Cook as well. I have him as my number 2. I have him right behind CMC.
I'm with you too. I mean, and in reality, CMC is my number 1 pick. I would take him first. I'm just saying, could you make the case?
You can make a case.
Would you laugh at him if he said, you know what, I'm going with the safer pick?
I might laugh at him regardless, whether he takes
That's
CMC or Cook. It doesn't matter who he takes. But I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if anybody in anybody's draft, if they end up deciding to go with Cook because they were a little bit afraid of CMC. Cook, he's a safe pick. He's a safe pick.
All right, so we're in agreement with that. All right,
Yeah.
Here's the tricky one. Who's your third running back? Who's the top 3? Who's the third?
So I'm gonna say we mentioned him earlier. He's the goofball everybody loves, Zeke Elliott.
Really?
Yeah, I think he's 3. He's slimmed down a little bit.
Okay.
So, and he fumbled a lot last year. He worked on that all off season. I think if Prescott can stay healthy, and I think if Prescott actually stayed healthy last year, I think Zeke would have finished with much better numbers. And there's just some consistency with him. He never gets hurt. Like, I don't know. I just think he's the next guy there for me, number 3.
Now, how would you feel if I told you David Montgomery scored more fantasy points than Ezekiel Elliott?
Well, did Ezekiel Elliott miss any games last year?
I'm just telling you. That's all part of the equation.
That's true. That's true. All right, but
what if I told you Kareem Hunt, who was the number 2?
Sure.
Scored more points than Elliott.
Right. But I'm looking at the complete body of work over the years with Ezekiel Elliott.
Okay.
Prescott got hurt somewhat early in the season, early October, and his numbers weren't really. He still had a decent year, but it wasn't like Ezekiel Elliott year. That Cowboys defense was awful. And when I don't even remember who was it, Andy Dalton. They had played Andy Dalton. They had some other schmuck in there a couple of games. Like, they just didn't have a good offense for him to be able to move the ball. I think their offensive line was hurt as well. There was just so many bad things that were going on. And like I said, this is another year. Zeke came in and he's slimmed down. He looks good. He looks healthy. I don't know. I would say he's more of I don't look at last year. He's going to duplicate that small production that he had last year. I think this is good. This is a whole other year. Prescott, hopefully, if he stays healthy, and they got a couple of offensive weapons that they didn't have last year either. So I like him. I like him at number 3.
All right. I don't know. With Derrick Henry, who scored the most fantasy points, you got and he's on a more complete offense. You can argue, his quarterback is healthy. We talked about Tannehill last week. I I can see the case you're making. I just feel like someone's probably going to go more safe and maybe take a guy like Henry or Kamara in that third spot. I just find Elliott, how he did last year with the unknown of Dak, seems like a stretch at 3. But I'll give you that. I'll give it to you. I would say, for me, based on right now, who's probably. Time's up.
The girls came home and I couldn't do anything. So you told me. See, I told you she was going to yell at me. We're almost done. We're going to wrap up in a little bit. Just give us like 45 more minutes.
All right. Once again, Big Meat's professionalism came through. We had to stop the podcast. So hopefully he can stitch and
lot of editing tonight. Lot of editing.
Yeah, his wife is all over this one. But okay. So let's just get back and just try to finish this. All right. So I'm going to go with Derrick Henry as my third running back. I just think he's just a safe running back at that point. I don't think he's going to be able to match and win a rushing title again this year. But if he stays healthy, I think he's still going to be a beast at the goal line. And I think that offense with all their weapons, with Julio, with AJ Brown, they're going to get a lot of goal line opportunities. That's just my feelings why Henry's there for me. So is Henry fourth for you? Who's number 4 then overall?
He is not fourth for me.
Oh, okay.
He is not fourth. I have Nick Chubb as my fourth.
Wow, you have a radical draft. Okay, you're bucking the system.
Well, I'm not Henry is fifth. I'm just gonna spoil that out there because I love Henry. I loved him last year, but there's something about him that I'm gonna call it right now. He's due for an injury. He's gonna get injured this year. He's gotten so many carries the last couple of years. They use him a lot, like between the tackles. I mean, he's not very shifty, right? He kind of bulldozers over guys, and then when he finds an opening, then he turns up the speed and he runs hard. But I think with Julio Jones there now, it's a little bit less for him. I don't know. I think this is going to be a little bit of a down year for Henry. I still think he's going to be good. I still have him fifth, but I don't trust him enough coming into this year to be top 4. My fourth guy is Chubb because he has, do the eyeball test. You watch him run. He's shifty. He's fast. He's powerful. I know Kareem Hunt is there, and that's going to steal away. If Kareem Hunt wasn't there, if Kareem Hunt got injured this preseason, right, like in one of the games he's injured, he's out for the year, and it's just Nick Chubb is going first overall. He's the guy that Roper is going to end up taking number 1 overall. But because Kareem Hunt is there, it holds him back a little bit. So I just love everything about Nick Chubb. I love that offense. They're all run first, right? They don't pass a lot. They run. And Chubb is right in the middle of that. So that's why I have him fourth. He's more of a safer pick, in my opinion, than Derrick Henry is this year.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. A lot earlier than I've seen for some in magazines and rankings. So that's putting it out there, Big Meat. Now, God knows if you're lying. That's the mystery with you. We never know if you're lying or not.
No. God's honest truth.
Yeah. Not trustworthy.
But I lie.
Yeah. So number 4 is interesting. I was going to say Kamara is going to be my number 4 running back because he's been pretty consistent. After other than that injury year where he had a high ankle sprain, and I think Mr. Roper had him that year. He was just terrible, but he had a pretty serious injury. He just was never the same, and he's built on his receiving game and the speed. And I think that he's going to be the main part of the offense for them, no matter who the quarterback is. The only problem is that I'm seeing so much news about Michael Thomas. There's a lot of drama with Michael Thomas right now and stuff like that. That makes me a little nervous. What's going on in that locker room? Is Sean Payton starting to lose the locker room? Is there a lot of controversy about something that's going on in that place? I know they're mad Michael Thomas waited for his surgery, so there's that. That's the reason for the drama. But is there drama going on in that locker room? And the uncertainty, the running back, the quarterback, makes me drop Kamara down a little bit. So I'm with you. You sold me. You're a couple spots early, but after watching some of the Hard Knocks and doing some reading, Prescott, if he's healthy, I think Elliott would be my number 4. And then if you took Kamara at number 5, I would say you're probably safe there, just because he was the third highest scoring running back. Like it's tough to pass on a guy that. I mean, it's a huge drop off. When you talk about Henry, Kamara, and Cook scoring almost 300 points, the next level of tier guys are at 200. They're almost 100-point difference. So that's a big chunk of.
But what's the big missing piece with Kamara?
Well, Drew Brees is gone.
Right. And when Drew Brees did not play in those 2 or 3 games last year, Kamara was like non-existent. Like he just didn't. I think there was a game where he didn't even catch a pass. I mean, they just didn't throw to him for whatever reason. It's like, how hard is it to just dump it off to the running back? I know if Jarvis was here, would get into on a Cam Newton tangent on that whole thing. But I just think Kamara benefited from having somebody like Drew Brees on the team, and now you're gonna try to ride with Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill. Like I just don't see Kamara being as effective. And remember, he had that one game where he had 6 touchdowns. I mean, you bring this up a lot, Azar. You say there's a guy, right, that you like consistency, right? And you look at some games where you're like, yeah, but this guy had like 4 touchdowns in one game, and 3 touchdowns in another game. But then the rest of the season, he was like, yeah, whatever. And by the end of the year, he had a good year. That's kind of how Kamara was. He just, that last game, he just kind of broke through and just went crazy, and that's why it catapulted him up to the top 3 there. So, and now without Drew Brees there, I'll tell you what. I've mentioned my top 5. I'll tell you right now, he's not even my 6th running back on my list.
Okay, all right. I have a feeling no matter what we say in our league, Kamara is going to go in the top 5. I just don't see him sliding past the 5th round. I mean, the 5th pick. But
I do.
Do you really? Wow.
I do. Yeah. I see him sliding. Yeah, just because of the other running backs that I mentioned.
I know what you're saying, and I understand the difference. But Drew Brees, it's not like if you're saying, well, no Drew Brees, I won't put Michael Thomas in the top 3 receivers because if he was healthy with no Drew Brees, because that you have to have a skilled quarterback to make the plays. We saw that with Cam Newton. That's the problem with Cam Newton. He can't even make the big throws and stuff like that. But you're not asking a lot for whoever it is. Even Jameis Winston can't screw up making swing passes to Kamara. I know you're shaking your head.
Mr. 30 interceptions. You were just ragging on him just last week about throwing 30 interceptions.
But the thing with them is, I don't think that team's going to be good, and I think they're going to be playing from behind a lot. And I have a feeling, like, don't forget, Jameis Winston. Like, we can knock on him, but Mike Evans was always considered a stud receiver with Jameis Winston throwing him the ball. It's not like Jameis Winston.
Oh, he throws the ball deep. Yeah, I mean, he had 30-plus touchdown passes last year.
Yeah, so it's not like Jameis Winston functionally can't do the job. Like, and I think with the good coach like Sean Payton bringing the best out of Jameis, I'm being optimistic, but I think Kamara is just a good back that you don't need. Again, like, you're giving Brees a lot of credit, but we saw how weak his arm looked. He wasn't the same Drew Brees. He wasn't making the same passes.
No, he wasn't.
I don't think he was making the defenses more honest or anything. I think Drew Brees just has his legacy, his reputation.
No, I think Drew Brees. I mean, he definitely didn't have the arm strength last year. I think he was like last in the league in deep pass attempts. But that's why he relied on Kamara more, because he was dumping the ball off to Kamara a lot more. He was focusing on the running game. Yeah. Whereas when Taysom Hill was in there, Taysom Hill can't throw, right? I mean, he can drop back and he uses his legs and tries to run. He becomes a running quarterback, something Drew Brees wasn't. So that took Kamara's game completely out of it. If Taysom Hill is in there, Taysom Hill is not a throwing quarterback. It's gonna be a little bit more of a Lamar Jackson type offense. I just don't see Kamara having the same number of receptions he's had with Drew Brees.
Well, that's a good deviation. So there's 2 scenarios. If Sean Payton announces Jameis Winston as the starting quarterback, does that change your perception? Because I would tell you, if Jameis Winston isn't the starting quarterback, and it's going to be I would drop Kamara's value right away. Like, I would be nervous if Winston wasn't the starting quarterback.
I'm not I've seen enough of Jameis Winston. I don't think he's a good quarterback. I just don't. I think what you're going to see is the same thing when Drew Brees was there the last couple of years. It might be Jameis Winston the quarterback, but here comes Taysom Hill every once in a while to to take those snaps and have those kind of wildcat offensive plays or whatever it is. That takes away a little bit of Kamara's what he's able to do. And like you said earlier, with Michael Thomas, if there's a little drama going on there in the locker room, you just don't know. I just there was always something about Kamara that I wasn't a big fan of. And then last year he was good, he was consistent, and then it was that one game that just he went off and scoring 6 touchdowns, and that boosted his numbers. So you look at his overall numbers, you're like, oh yeah, he was great, top three. Give him 2 touchdowns in that game instead of 6, and where does he end up? Right? I just don't. I'm just not sold on him. If Drew Brees came back for another year, then maybe I'd say yes, Kamara deserves to be top 4, but not with an unknown quarterback going in there. Not
All right.
unknown, but guys that just I don't think have proven that they've played well with Kamara.
All right. Well, let's get into your sixth pick because we're running out of time here. We're going pretty long on this podcast. Well, who's the sixth pick then for you?
My 6th pick is Barkley,
Okay.
Saquon Barkley. I think
Okay.
he's had a couple of down years since his rookie year. I like what the Giants have done with their team. I think he's going to come back, and he's so explosive. He's the one guy his rookie year that reminded me of Barry Sanders. And if you remind me of Barry Sanders, the way you're running like that, I mean, how can I not put you higher than 6th? With another year for Daniel Jones, um, and I mean Barkley got hurt obviously last year, but I just think he's so explosive that I wouldn't be surprised by the end of the year he's a top 3 running back again, like he was his rookie year.
Okay. Okay. Well, I like that. I just think I'm a little nervous without seeing the preseason. I want to see what he looks like because he does seem to get hurt lately. Like we're still looking at his rookie year when he came on the scene, and I think there's still some legacy with him. But
Hmm.
that team around him isn't that solid still. There's some issues with the offense. I would go Nick Chubb there. So to move on, like you made your case
Yep.
for Nick Chubb, easily there. Um, I would have said Taylor. I like Taylor more because I just again because of the Kareem Hunt. But what we talked about earlier, the whole Wentz situation, it makes me nervous to put Taylor up too high. I'd rather be if I'm drafting in the top 6 or 7, you want a more safer pick. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to
Yeah.
start gambling if I was drafting 5th or 6th. That's why I think Chubb is probably a safer pick
Mm.
to the case that you made. All right. So who's 7 then, Big Meat?
I would. I still don't have Kamara there. I'd go Taylor. I'd say Taylor is at that spot. I think that's where he fits. Especially if Wentz starts week 1, I think Taylor's going to be there. I do think Marlon Mack coming back. I think he's gonna eat into some of his carries, but I think they have such a good offensive line. They've built it all around their offensive their run game. So I do think Taylor is right there at number 7.
Okay. I'm still a little nervous with Taylor there. I I think from a safer back, if I was drafting 7th, I like Jones right now, just because he's coming
Mm,
back. The team is still a solid around him. I'm a little nervous about the whole Rodgers not doing any preseason, but that doesn't impact Jones. It doesn't impact the running game or anything like that. Jones, 2 years in a row, like we saw the first year, we kind of laughed like there's no way he's going to do it the second year. He finished over 200 fantasy points. I think he was the 1, 2, 3, 4. I think he was like the 5th or 6th leading
yeah,
scoring running back. So I
yeah,
think if you're looking for a safe right there, you can't go wrong with Jones at this point. I think Jones for me would probably be the safer pick. And then I won't lie, if you're at the 8th pick, I think by then Taylor would make sense to me at that
yeah,
point. I mean,
yeah.
so
And that's where I have Kamara. I have Kamara 8th. I think at
okay,
that point it's like, okay, we get it. At some point you got to take Kamara. Can't have him
okay,
keep sliding down. But to your point with Jones, I do like Jones, but there was something. But if you look at his game log, I remember somebody said something after the season ended, and we were kind of looking ahead to next year, and we were like, "Well, what do you think of Aaron Jones? He's going to be right there first round. He had a great year. You look at his overall numbers, and it was like, oh, they're solid. But then you look at his game log, and you're like, oh, like very inconsistent. There were like some big games, and then he disappeared, and it's like, no wonder that's why he had like overall his numbers at the end of the year. And Aaron Rodgers, there's still the kind of mess with Aaron Rodgers that's there. I think it's almost kind of like twofold there. If Aaron Rodgers comes back and he's happy and he has the same year as he had last year, well, now he's throwing touchdown passes. It's less opportunity for Aaron Jones to score touchdowns. And if he's not happy and he comes back and he doesn't come back, or he comes back and doesn't have a good year, that doesn't help Aaron Jones either. It's almost like he has to kind of be in the middle of the pack for Jones to have a big year. So I have Jones 10th. I'll just tell you right now, just to kind of speed things up here. I had Kamara 8th, and then Jones 10th. And
Okay.
another guy there in between.
I agree with what you're saying, and we can move on from the point. The only thing is the erratic scoring of Jones. It is frustrating, but you also had the number one receiver in the league, Devontae Adams. So if Jones isn't scoring, Devontae Adams is having big games, and that's the problem when you have the best receiver on the team, which stretches the field. So it's a good thing to have one of the best receivers in the league, but the problem is there are games that Devontae Adams, he just is going to own the game, and all the scoring is going through Devontae Adams. That's the problem.
Yeah,
with Jones,
and that was,
and I think that's why he slides, because you're going to have those hiccup games where you're like, "Oh, what happened?" It's because Devontae Adams had 3 touchdowns that game, and Aaron was in the zone throwing to Devontae Adams, because there are some games he looks unstoppable, and I think that hurts Jones, where you don't really need to rely on him because he's so good, and that's the problem in the reverse with Derrick Henry. Sometimes when he's just in the zone running, it just hurts the receiving game in the passing game, because we can just run it all day. Like, you don't need to do anything different or fancy. So yeah, I see what you're saying. I just think where you're drafting, if you're the 8th pick and Jones isn't a bust, because usually the second half of
it's safe enough there at that point. Yeah.
So
but that was my logic last year with Patrick Mahomes and CEH. It's like Mahomes wants his touchdowns. He's going to put up his numbers.
Yeah.
And the more he's doing that, the less for CEH. So
CEH. I mean,
too many mouths to feed.
He was in the same class as Miles Sanders, Carson, Dobbins. That's what CEH. He was actually the lowest out of those 4, but he just underperformed from what we thought as a rookie on a team as explosive as.
And you remember that first game, the opening game? He was like, he was like unbelievable. He just scored like 3 touchdowns or whatever. Like,
it looked like a genius drafted him. And that was about it. Yeah, that was it. All right, so who's your 9th pick then?
So here's where we start getting into like a little bit of like, it's kind of getting a little hairy here. I'm going to say Gibson. I like Antonio Gibson at 9 because I like that Washington defense. I actually like Ryan Fitzpatrick as a quarterback there. And I've always liked Terry McLaurin. I think he's a talented receiver. He just never had a great quarterback throwing to him. And now you throw in Antonio Gibson there that, can catch some passes and, going to ride on that defense. So they're going to try to run out the clock a lot with him. I like him there at 9. I actually consider him as kind of like a little bit of a sleeper. I know he's not considered really a sleeper, but for a guy that I think is going to go 9th, I wouldn't be all that shocked if he's this year's, Dalvin Cook or somebody like that just, came out of nowhere a little bit and be like a top 3, top 4 running back.
Yeah, and I had him last year from a fantasy, and he was good. Once he got injured, I think he would have had much better numbers. He just got hurt near the end of the year, and it wasn't the same after that injury. But he looked like he had a lot of upside. So that I don't think that's a bad pick. So I would probably, because I didn't pick him yet, if I was I would take Barkley at that point over Gibson just because of the pedigree of Barkley. I'm like, look, Barkley, someone who has tremendous upside, a little bit of injury risk. I would take Barkley over Gibson because Gibson, at that point, I'm just going based on the pedigree on the guy, just who's done it before. And
sure. I mean, I have Barkley much higher, but I mean, I would.
So I have Barkley sliding. I really do. I just think people are going to be afraid because it's people have invested a lot of capital in him. I remember Barkley reminds me. Remember those years where Todd Gurley, he had these like breakout years, and then he was just like nothing the following year, and people got burned by him. I think R3 actually got burned by him one year. And then he slid the following year, and he had a monster year. So I think Barkley is due, kind of what you were saying. But if I was drafting where you took him, I don't want to be wrong with the 6th pick like you're talking about. You know what I mean? Where 9th or 10, hey, if he screwed up, hey, I'm drafting 9th and 10th. What am I going to do? Like I can at least go in the wraparound and pick a safer, another safe back
Sure, but that's
or a
why he's
top
not going to
receiver.
last. He's not going to last till 9th or 10th.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
only
that's
problem.
yeah.
You're
Well,
not gonna have to worry about that because he ain't sliding past me at 7.
all right. We'll see. We'll see. I see your boy Chubb being there. There's no way you're passing on Chubb.
No,
So
yeah, no way,
Big Meat's
no
got a
way.
Chubb for the Chubb.
Yes,
All
I
right.
do.
All right. So 11 and 12 are tricky, and you can throw darts and see who's going to be the 11th or 12th, like in the wraparound. Who are you thinking for 11 and 12?
The 11 and 12. So these are the two guys. I mean, you're running. It's slim now at this point.
Yeah.
But I like the rookie out of Pittsburgh, Najee Harris. I
Okay.
think their offensive line is a little bit of a mess, but it's Pittsburgh. They run the ball all the time. They always produce successful running backs, and he's the guy there. There's really nobody else there. There's no backup. Connor is gone, so he's going to be the guy that's there. Roethlisberger's still there, so I think he's going to be productive enough at that spot. And that 12th spot, at some point you got to throw Eckler back in there. Eckler on a uh, for I'm trying to I keep saying San Diego, but it's Los Angeles now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Los Angeles Chargers. It's with Herbert, right? I like Herbert. I like he's going to have a decent second year. I mean, he had a great first year as a rookie. I think their offensive is just too strong for Eckler to not pass, to not get past 12th. And he got hurt last year, but when he was in there, he was catching passes left and right. He was still productive. At that point there, I think he's really the only other decent running back that's left.
Now let me ask you, why? I see what you're saying. There's always something about Eckler that makes me a little nervous because he's sort of one-dimensional. He's really just a passing game. He's like a Kevin Falk or anyways, but or James White type of. That's what he reminds me of in that offense. Why not James Robinson there? He scored over 200 fantasy points last year. You got a new rookie. There's a lot of hype, and they're going to want to probably take some pressure off the rookie. They don't want to make him do too much and have him overwhelmed.
So you're talking about the rookie. You're talking about Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence,
right?
yeah.
But they also drafted Etienne. So Travis Etienne they drafted pretty high, and he played with Trevor Lawrence in college. So you're right. I liked James Robinson last year. I think he was great. And then they went and drafted Etienne, and it's like, why they draft him? When they already had a running back. So I think they're going to go with that 2 running back headed monster. And unfortunately, they're not Chubb and Hunt. They're not Chubb and Hunt, and they're not a Cleveland team with a good offensive line, and they're not like a run first type of team. I think there's going to be some growing pains there with those guys. I would have, if they never drafted Etienne, James Robinson would most definitely be top 8 running back. But they drafted a high running back there. So I don't like that.
Okay. I just wanted to ask because there's Robinson, Jacobs from Las Vegas is another running back, put up some good numbers, but it's really fallen on the depth charts, like of people's fantasy, like when people think fantasy running backs, they've slid. I'm with you, just to kind of wrap things up. I'm with you with Harris. I think Pittsburgh always seems to have a good running game. They made Connor look like a superstar some season, like for a season. They can make anybody look good.
Yeah.
So even as a rookie, I think Harris has tremendous upside, and I still think Pittsburgh can move the ball, and they like to run the. You want a guy that they're going to want to run the ball, and I think Harris is good.
Well, and just real quick, that's kind of what I was saying earlier about somebody like who are we talking about scoring all the points, and then the running back is not just too many mouths to feed, right? Dallas, no, it was
Dallas.
Was it Henry? Was Henry? We were saying about Henry, too many mouths to feed. So yeah, because well, anyway, it doesn't matter. The whole point is the same. Whereas Najee Harris plays on a team. I was thinking Aaron Jones. So we're talking about Jones and Rodgers.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said.
I said Jones. I said Jones.
Oh, I misheard you. I thought you said.
Is anybody listening to me?
I don't know. I'm just trying to get my point across because we're running long, and I want to try to just throw it out here. Right. So he's a perfect situation where Ben Roethlisberger is not going to throw 40 touchdown passes, right? There's no like big receivers there where they're just going to like dominate and score all these points. Like it's going to be Harris, but they're good. They're just good enough to move the chains. You know what I mean? They're just good enough to, and they're not going to dominate the fantasy points. that could end up being dominated by Najee Harris. You
Yeah.
know,
And
if Harris got drafted by just whatever, Green Bay, let's just say, and I wouldn't feel the same way about Najee Harris this year. I'd be like, no, because Rodgers is going to want to throw his touchdowns to Devontae Adams.
yeah, it's that
You know what I mean?
pedigree. It's the pedigree. Like it just Pittsburgh is known for good running backs.
Yeah.
They just historically have done it. Uh, that was back in the day. I remember early on in fantasy, we used to think about that with Denver running backs. Denver used to always produce solid running backs, and then like
Mm-hmm.
that's gone to hell in the last 10 years. It feels like, but I remember just so many years. Like anybody that gets on a Denver, they always had good years as running. So I'm with you at Harris, number 12. If you're drafting in our league, that's more of the wraparound. I would take another shot right there at CAH. The offense is just too good. And
You said C. It sounded like you said CAH again.
no,
I think
no,
you did this before. Jarvis jumped all over you.
CEH. The Fresh Prince of Hilaire
Yes.
is on too good of an offense. Andy Reid, it's his second year with Andy Reid. If he gets the trust of Andy Reid, I think one of the guys has already left. I don't think he has the same level of competition that he did last year. I think he's going to be more
Right.
because
Is
they
it
lost.
Damian Williams? Did they get rid of him?
I don't know if
He
he
came
went
back.
Did he come back? Because I thought one of them went on the COVID list and never came back.
He did. It was Damian Williams, but I thought he did come back.
Did he come back? I don't
Well,
remember.
we'd have to look that up. We
Because
have to check with our
Bell,
producers.
Le'Veon Bell was the real threat to him, his playing time.
Yeah.
Right?
Because
And
and then Le'Veon Bell got out of there, and he said, "What did he say? He hated it there. He said he would never play for them again, or something."
Yeah, so Le'Veon
But
Bell was good, gone. So I think CH second year, we saw some flashes of a good player.
sure,
I think if I'm only going based on the fact that where you're drafting and what they produced last year as a rookie, he was up there with the Jacobs, the Miles Sanders, some really good backs for a rookie, and there is a lot of mouths to feed um, in Kansas City, and where he's being picked for in our draft league, where we do a 10-man. If he's my number 2 running back, you're not relying on him to be the number 1. I think you're in a safe position. I think he's okay. I think he's less likely to be a complete bust in his
yeah,
second year than some of the other names. Like there's too many question marks with the Robinsons, like you were saying, with the Jacobs, and some of these other guys. Like even Miles Sanders with that offense makes me a little nervous.
hmm
I mean, Eckler, I guess you could make a case for Eckler right there too. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he.
yeah, and there's quite a few other backs that we didn't list, but yeah, CH. I think in that case there though, like too many mouths to feed, and I think with CH, it's if he has a good year this year, like a solid year where he's like, whatever, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns even, right? That would mean that Kansas City this year would be the greatest offense of all time. I mean, as long as Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey stay healthy, they would be like they would have to be the highest scoring team of all time, because that means those guys aren't getting the scores.
I know what you're saying, but I just feel like if you're a defense, are you trying to shut down Hilaire or are you trying to shut down Mahomes? And I think defenses are going to be more focused on that combination of Travis Kelsey and Mahomes. What can they do to stop that part of the game? But I think Hilaire is shifty enough and is a good outlet for someone like Mahomes that when the play breaks down, he's looking for a quick dump off. Hilaire's got the speed and the moves to get you some yards. I don't think he's a good. He goes back to almost like that Eckler. Like sometimes I feel like he can pound the ball, but he's not that big. I think he's more like an Eckler. Like he's more shifty, like in the flats. Like he's just more of like a receiving back. And I think
Sure.
and that and remember how many times Andy Reid's teams, he's made these great players from the passing game. It's not their running game that made them so great.
Right.
It was the passing game. So I think there's just a lot of upside with Hilaire right there. And I think I don't think look, he didn't have a monster year this year and he scored 140 points. You give him a couple more touchdowns, if he can give you 180 points and he's up in the top 10, well, you're drafting him in the top 10. Like he's the number 10.
Right where he goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see it.
I think
I can see it.
As the 12th pick, 12th running back off the board, I see him finishing either in the top 10 or just outside the top 10. I think that's and that's where you drafted him. So again, don't look at it like he's a bust because he didn't finish in the top 5. Well, you didn't draft a top 5 running back. You drafted the 12th best running back off the board. And if he can match that production where you drafted him,
right,
you're in good shape. You did what you expected. So that is just a way of perspective, I guess, when you're looking at your draft.
Yeah, if you're drafting for what you want that guy to be a 12th ranked running back and you take him there, then yeah, you've done your job. But if you're hoping that, the guy kind of bumps up and you kind of got a little bit of a steal there, I don't think CEH is going to be top 5, top 6 running back material. I think he's going to be right around where you would draft him, between 10 and 12, right around that area.
If you were going to take a flyer and say, well, who has more upside? Well, maybe then you take a Carson in Seattle and say, maybe I take him because I think he might be the number 1 back. I think might be the sole back. I have to do a little bit more research on him, but maybe Carson. Or maybe then you take Robinson and say, hey, if he actually has the starting job, maybe I take him there because he's got more potential to break past the top 10 and finish in the top 5 or 7. But yeah, I think CH is a safe. Like if you're worried about hey, I need a solid number 2 because maybe my number 1 pick he's a little got some question marks. I think CH will be a stable number 2 back for you.
So. Yeah, and my final thought on that too is it's you could go into games because it's Kansas City, and you could say this could be a high scoring game. Like they could put up huge points, and it's more opportunity for CH to get near into the red zone, and it's just
exactly.
At least you could get excited for it going into a game, being like, all right, we're going to see a good offense, and not rely on like Dave Montgomery if you had him as your number 2 back with Chicago, and it's like, are they even going to get into the red zone at all? So
yeah. I mean, it's not like you're drafting like a Zach Moss in Buffalo, and he might not even touch the ball all game, or So, and we didn't even say like the Patriots, Damian Harris, like what like he could potentially finish in the top 12 this year.
Because Sony Michel is still there. That's why.
Yeah. Well, again, like it's.
If they cut Sony Michel, we're going to have to do this top 12 running back rankings again. Because I think maybe Harris might jump into that top 12.
But Belichick scares me. But again, there's a guy that I drafted him late and he could explode on the scene and have a monster year for you. But anyways, long podcast. We'll wrap it up there, Big Meat. I think it's longer than normal because of how many stops we had to do, but that's okay.
Well, it's entertainment is back, Azar, and fantasy is back, and there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, no,
lots to talk about. And this was one of those that we didn't have Jarvis, we didn't have our third man in, so we got to actually talk in this one. We didn't have him jumping in and going on tangents. So we have a lot to say. It's a lot of built up over the several podcasts.
That is true because he always peppers in. Well, it depends on the strategy you're taking and what you want to wrap around. And
he gets very deep. He gets very deep. It felt very philosophical.
Yeah, he does.
But we love our little Jarvis.
We do. All right, Big Meat. Well, before you get thrown out of the house or kicked out of this room one more time, give your bedroom back to your wife, and we'll catch up next week. I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about.
Sounds all right, good. Folks. I got some editing to do.
Yes, you do. And as always, Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, and if you don't follow us on Twitter, it's Azar and the Meat. On Twitter, we're going to try to be more interactive this year. If you missed the last poll on the Olympics, but try to at least follow us on Twitter. That way you can get some updates. Until then, talk to you later, Big Meat.
Good night.
Good night.